Well, hey there, sweet peas. Welcome back to Friendless. It's your pal, James Avramenko, back with the end of the month little guy wrap up for May 2024. It has been a real roller coaster of a month for seemingly everyone. I don't know. Is anyone out there doing okay? If you are, what is it that you know that the rest of us don't? And why aren't you sharing? As usual with these little guy episodes, I'm going to go a little deeper into some concepts I've been thinking about in therapy and then get to some really fun listener questions. So strap in. It's going to be a great episode. Let's get to it. Do you think that Justin Timberlake knew the cultural impact he was going to have when he missung Me? It truly has been May. And I, for one, am really looking forward to June. I was out the other day with a friend of mine, and we were discussing our mutual lack of mental health. And they said something that really struck me because it's something that I have been experiencing over the last month or two. Is this idea of like when you are diagnosed with something, in my case, I was recently diagnosed with BPD. Previously, I'd been diagnosed with ADHD. I've self-diagnosed autism, yada yada. But when you get a diagnosis, something really frustrating happens in that all of a sudden it feels like the symptoms that are associated with that condition suddenly get exponentially worse. For me, ever since I got this diagnosis at the start of April, I have been in just a really steady decline in terms of my mental, emotional stability. My coping skills are just out the door. And I feel like I have been in a perpetual pit. Even though I also know that I am doing really well. And a really similar thing happened to me when I was diagnosed with ADHD. I became suddenly so acutely aware of the symptoms and of the, maladaptive behaviors that were coming out of this condition. And I do remember at the time, and this is what I said to my friend, I remember at the time reading about there's a term that I, of course, don't actually remember the name of, and I've frantically Googled since and have come up with nothing. But essentially, it's this experience you have where it's not that your symptoms actually become worse. It is, in fact, that you are now more aware of them, and you're realizing that these behaviors that you've been enacting, daily, are not normal. They are conditions or they're symptoms of the condition. I remember reading extensively and seeing so many accounts talking about how after they had their ADHD diagnosis, they suddenly felt just 100 times worse. And so I tried to offer some comfort to my friend, and I'm now in turn trying to offer some comfort to myself that it isn't necessarily that it's getting worse. It's just that you're becoming more aware of it. And awareness, if used correctly, can lead to much more enthusiastic, maybe is the word, integration of reforming these behaviors and of addressing the maladaptive nature of some of these behaviors and instead flipping them and rectifying. I'm trying really hard to be cautious around and mindful around using words like wrong or fix, right? Because it isn't that I am broken, it isn't that my friend is broken, it's that we have these conditions that cause us to struggle in what is termed neurotypical society, right? So like BPD's real fucking hard. And the more I've read about it and the more I've learned about it and the more I've reflected on myself, I have the really fun version of it that they call quiet BPD, which is that you don't tend to get very outwardly hostile. You don't tend to get very outwardly explosive as the sort of like stereotypical BPD from a movie, would be. But instead, you channel all that rage inside, and it is just it's so fun. It's so fun to just uncontrollably hate yourself. As I say that with a laugh and then pause the recording, cry, and then try to pick things back up again. It has been an incredibly chaotic month for me, externally, internally, and I've been spending a lot of time thinking about what I wanted to say on this episode, how I wanted to say it, what I wanted to share, what I wanted to keep kind of close to the chest, and it really stems from I have really found a lot of personal peace and a lot of personal expression through not only podcasting but also through the sort of the framing of being an autobiographical artist, using my personal experiences and using my personal perspectives and trying to channel that into something that is not only personally satisfying for myself, but also potentially connective for an audience. And that at times can be, a razor wire of a tightrope, because when I'm talking about a personal experience of mine, I inevitably am talking about other people who are involved in these stories. And I do try to be as vague as I can be, whether it's a good story or a bad story. I try to not identify people. I try to not point fingers at people. And yet at the same time, too, through that vagueness, that ends up causing a lot of tension for people, because either, they know it's about them or they think it's about them. And that's been a really big cause of tension for me this month. I don't want to like grandstand here, and I don't want to like pontificate endlessly about like woe is me. I think that, at the very baseline of it is I'm just some guy, right? I'm just some guy and I'm just living this life. And this is my first go around. This is my first time doing any of this. Every time something happens, that is like the first time I've experienced that, and I'm trying to make sense of it as best I can. And one of the outlets I have found is talking about it, is telling other people about my perspective on things. I get it wrong all the time, and I get it right a lot of the time too. And either way, it's my perspective, I don't believe my experience is the truth. I just think it's my truth. And I think that's what's really fun about life, is that like 10 people can be in the same room at the same time and have 10 different stories about what happened in that room, right? And I find that fascinating. And when I try to share my stories, I don't intend them to be seen as gospel. I don't intend them to be seen as exactly divine truth. I just intend them as a perspective. And that kind of leads me into these ideas I've been exploring recently. This sort of the concept of accountability, the concept of what is an apology and how to apologize, and then the sort of the baseline behind all of that is really like, what is communication, and who should you be communicating with and why, right? Just like in my interviews, I use these really mundane terms, right? Friend, community, these words that we use all the time, and they're really innocuous, and yet they influence every choice we make, and they influence every single facet of our life every day. And we never really stop to really consider what they really mean to us. We take other people's definitions on almost through osmosis, like subconsciously. We think we know what community is because we see how other people use community, right? We think we know what accountability is because we follow some self-help accounts on Instagram, and we think I probably do that, and then we just move on. And so I am really trying to personally stop and unpack and really dig into these concepts. And obviously I'm not going to be able to provide any answers within 45 minutes, but like I think that it's really imperative that before we really dive in, that everybody recognize that this is not the truth. This is just one facet of a truth. And that if I've learned anything through my DBT therapy, uh, which is a redundancy, I realize, it's that multiple things can be true at once, and just because other people have different perspectives doesn't invalidate yours, and also doesn't mean that you have to validate theirs. I think there is this push right now in a lot of sort of self-help mental health communities to sort of like validate across the board. And while I agree with that conceptually, I also think that there's a slippery slope between giving validation to somebody who needs help, and then giving validation to someone who is repeating an objective lie. And that doesn't come with any fingers pointed at anyone directly. I just mean, I would, if I was going to point that finger at anyone, it would be to point at myself first, right? One thing that I have grown to really recognize is that the way I remember things isn't always how things happened. It's why I really rely on things like I rely on text messages and I rely on emails and other kind of communications, because I can go back and I can look at it and I can say, okay, this was said, this was said, this was said, this was what happened, because in my brain it becomes so muddy. And especially once I become dysregulated, if I get myself in an episode and I'm just completely like just out to lunch and my brain is somewhere else, I stop basically having the ability to create short-term memories, right? I become so disassociated that I lose track of reality. And so to go back and to see these things in black and white and understand this is where you fucked up and this is what you said and this is where, this is what they communicated to you. This is what you can see plainly. Don't make assumptions, right? Don't try and read minds. Just look at what was said. That really helps me anchor myself in some kind of objective reality, even though I recognize that even that isn't objective, because, swinging into this communication concept, like it's not just that people lie, because I don't think that people will, as often as we think, I don't think that they actively and maliciously lie. I think that more often than not, myself very much included in this, we trick ourselves into believing the lie before we've even said it, because of ingrained defense mechanisms of subconscious shame and all these different reactions and emotions going on in our nervous system. We say things with the expectation that I could say one sentence, know what is going on behind that sentence. I'm trying to think of an example. I could say, I'll just go with this because it's popping back. I could say, I love you, right? And behind that sentence, 3 words, is a novel, right? In my brain of all the thoughts that are connected to that. I love you because of this and because of that and because of that and because of that and despite of that and da 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 da. But all I've said is I love you. And a form of modern social communication is expecting other people to understand the implication of what we said, not just what we said. And this, I'm realizing, has become a major, major point of frustration for me. Um, I'll often blame it, I guess, on my autism, but at the same time too, I think it's just a source of bullshit. Is At least in Canadian society, I don't know if this is the norm across the board. I know in Canadian society, there's this expectation for pleasantries and an expectation for subtext of I'm going to say one thing and expect you to know, I'll say A and you're supposed to know B, C, D, E, F, right? And that is such complete horseshit, because people then will use that to be mad at the person that they're clearly not communicating with. Right? And that's where I want to spin into the sort of first element of the Trinity I discussed, is this idea of accountability and what exactly is accountability. And I think, using this example of like, I said this, but I really meant that, I think you should be expected to be accountable for that, not the person who misunderstood you. You need to be accountable for that miscommunication because you didn't say exactly what you meant. And now obviously people are human. Communication is sloppy. We're going to fuck up. And it's really imperative that we offer each other kindness and softness and empathy, and we try our best to hold those miscommunications and understand those miscommunications. But I think it's imperative on the speaker to take accountability for not actually communicating. And that so that brings me to the statement, accountability. What exactly is it? Because, in my experience, accountability has been a manipulation. And I think for the most part, it's been a manipulation on my part. I think I've tried to take accountability for things, not just to simply take accountability, not to simply say I fucked up, but to continue um, the connection. And I recognize now, this is actually what has put me into such a deep black hole recently, is that um, my need for connection and my really deep rooted loneliness is really an offshoot of of my personality disorder, of my BPD. And um and to have that shown to me so clearly, that all the years, all the agony that would spring up in my body when I became disconnected from the people I didn't want to be, when I was begging for connection from people who couldn't or wouldn't connect with me, and the actual physical pain that came out of that has just left me feeling so sad um, for those past selves. And I've misconstrued accountability with a chance to stay connected to the people that my body was telling me it needs to be connected to. When the truth of the matter is, accountability starts with yourself, for yourself. You talk to yourself and you take responsibility for what you did. And, like I've talked in past episodes, you give yourself the validation you want from others. You give yourself the love you want from others. You start with you and you take accountability with yourself, and you recognize that, this need that I was putting on someone else was something that I was actually denying myself. I don't have the textbook dictionary definition of accountability, but for me, what it represents is the idea of taking ownership of your actions, no matter what the circumstances around that choice or that action might have been. So, it could be really easy for me to say, well, I have BPD, well, I have ADHD, well, I have autism, well, I have trauma. Like I could say I did this because of those things, and it would be easy, and I could say, let me off the hook, understand. And I think that there is a facet of that within the story. I think that these things lend to understanding, and in the hope is that they will lend to the listener or the other person to soften and try to understand. And at the same time too, I think that they can't be used as excuses. This isn't to be like, bootstrap yourself and stiff upper lip. What I mean is, I think genuine true accountability is recognizing that whatever your intentions, whatever the conditions within you are, you still hold responsibility for the impact that your words have on others. It doesn't matter if you were dysregulated. If you said somebody should go die, then it then you need to take accountability for that, right? It doesn't matter if you were dysregulated. It doesn't matter if you remember or not. If someone remembers you doing it, then the onus is now on you to make amends for that, right? And to take responsibility for that. Reparation of these kinds of breaks comes out of a desire for personal accountability, not through shame, not through capitulation, but through the removal of that competition, right? It's by realizing that we are not solitary creatures. I have been alone for, well, I mean, basically the whole year. I've basically spent in part of the term borderline solitude, seeing friends here or there, but mostly being alone. And I've really come to realize that we are not built to be alone. We are built to be social creatures. We are built to have conflict. We're not supposed to agree with our friends all the time. We're not supposed to placate and enable each other. We're supposed to challenge each other and want more for each other. And so we have to learn how to exist within conflict with the people that we love. We have to learn how to tolerate them fucking up and us fucking up. We have to be able to be in connection with people that we can fuck up with and still not be abandoned. And again, it is, life is just a series of paradoxes, because the best way to connect to people is by first connecting to yourself, right? And so, one of the is the term modality? I don't know. But one of the concepts I've been working with that I've talked about lots in past episodes is I've been doing a lot of shadow work, and I've been really reflecting on myself and in how I show up um, in a negative light, right? Shadow work is the idea of like, what are your bad qualities? What are the things that you do that upset others? What are the things you do that hurt others? Why do you hurt others, right? Is the sort of simple version. And it's really trying to unpack and recognize that you're just a person. You're not special. And that's what's beautiful about it, is that you're just some guy. You're just some gal. You're just some person doing the best you can, right? And there's no shame in having these quote unquote shadow traits. There's actually quite a beauty in it to recognize that you are fallible, to recognize that you don't know everything, and to be powerless. I often quote Saul Williams, very simple line: vulnerability is power, right? And so if you open yourself up, and if you work to stay soft, and to stay vulnerable, and to stay curious, first and foremost about yourself, this shadow work is staggeringly healing. So, for me, I'm really impulsive, especially emotionally, and I get desperate for connection, especially with people who don't want to be connected to me. I find safety in people who have hurt me. That's the root of my BPD, is that I was raised with a nervous system that was comforted by chaos, because that was the system that I was raised in. So I am most familiar with disconnect. I am most familiar with contempt. I'm most familiar with people telling me why I'm worthless, and then trying my best to earn some degree of love and connection from them, which is just staggeringly dysfunctional on so many levels. And something that I am working really, really hard on addressing. A really broad example, but one that does personally touch me, is this idea of, there's the different attachment styles, right? There's anxiously and avoidantly attached, there's securely attached, and there's disorganized attachment. I'm disorganized, but I lean much more towards anxiously attached. And the shadow side of the anxious attacher is manipulation. People pleasing isn't kindness. It's being nice, right? You be nice to people so that they'll do what you want for them, right? People pleasing is not a good trait. To always be pliant, to always placate other people's needs, to always give and give and give and give, until one day you explode and you scream and you yell and you hurl all the built up insults at the person who's suddenly not doing what you want them to do, right? That's manipulation. And so people who are anxiously attached, or call themselves people pleasers, that can be really dangerous. And I have put others in really dangerous, emotionally, situations, because of my tendency to people please, my tendency to just roll over and take it and take it and take it and take it until I finally absolutely cannot. Which loops me back to this concept of accountability. I have to be accountable to myself for what I didn't communicate. They couldn't have known I wasn't doing well because I didn't say. I said, "Oh yeah, all good, no worries. Fuck yeah, let's do that instead." "Oh yeah, no, I didn't want to do it," right? Like, so it's recognizing that you are not the hero of the story. It's just you're the perspective of your story. That's all. Nobody's a hero. Nobody's a villain. Everybody's just, again, coming back to this thing, everybody's just some person doing their best in their first go around the planet. And I think the sooner we can recognize that, the sooner we can stop calling everybody monsters, heroes, angels, all these hyperbolic terms, the sooner we just can say, like, oh, wow, that's a person. That's not a hero. That's just some guy. I think the healthier we're all collectively going to be when we remove this pressure of this, like, it's like this stratification of the experience, or it's like putting tiers or classes onto the human experience of, like, you're not worthy unless you're a hero, or likewise, you're not worthy until you're a villain, right? Like, the example that pops into my brain is like serial killers, like nobody, well, I shouldn't say nobody. There are people who like them, but nobody like likes a serial killer, but they become infamous, right? And that becomes its own version of fame and notoriety, and you become known throughout the ages, and your name gets echoed, and I think, what the fuck am I saying? My brain is going into one of those ADHD spider webs. I think I'm at point F when I should be at point B. Are we following this? I really hope so. I'm gonna just keep continuing down that thread. But it's this idea that like we are only worthy if we receive the next tier of exposure to the community, right? No matter what we do, as long as we become exposed, then we are worthy of attention. When the truth of the matter is, nobody's worthy of attention. I don't deserve you to listen to this podcast just because I did it. I don't deserve any of it. I had I had a TikTok last month hit 2 million views because I made a joke about how you should flush with the toilet seat down at a friend's place. And it's like, I don't deserve that. I didn't earn that. I just made a dumb comment for 15 seconds and put it up on the internet. And so like that doesn't make me special. That doesn't mean, oh, I tapped into something incredible. That just means I made a dumb joke and people laughed at it, right? That doesn't earn me some new spot. And I think this is really one of the roots of this social anxiety, is that we think we have to earn respect and we have to earn these accolades in order to be worthy of just living our lives. Oh boy. Okay, I have spun myself away from the point. Accountability. I think once you've kind of looked at yourself and you've really explored yourself and you've recognized points of damage, points of rupture in connections, that's where apologies come into play. And apologies are real tricky, as I am learning lately. I started reading this book called Sorry, 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 and it's literally just all about how to apologize, what makes a good apology, what are examples of bad apologies, and all that kind of fun stuff that comes along with the way. And the book has just radically opened my eyes. I am absolutely loving it, and I got way ahead of myself. One of the things it talks about literally in the book is it literally says, if you're reading this and you're feeling compelled to apologize, finish the book. And I, of course, being the impulsive neurodivergent that I am, did not take that piece of advice. And I reached out to somebody who I felt deserves an apology, and I tried to structure my communication around the book's suggested method, and it went well at first, and then it all collapsed, which is not to be unexpected. And at the same time too, I'm happy I tried. I feel like I did the part that I could, and the rest just is what it is. There are other factors to that connection that are just not going to be repaired through this type of communication, if at all. And you know what? That's fine. I accept that. But what I really wanted to talk about was that at the very start of the book, they give you 6.5 steps of what make a good apology. And I wanted to just like kind of flash through them because I think that this is really incredibly useful information for everyone. Obviously, you should just go read the book, but if you don't have the time or, the access to it, this is at the very least a little cheat sheet of the core philosophy behind it. So the 6.5 steps are: number 1, say you're sorry. Just say it. Say you're sorry. Really communicate it. Don't say if, don't say but, don't say, don't couch it, right? Just say it directly. I am sorry. Number 2 is for what you did. Name it. Don't dance around it. Don't be vague. Be clear. I am sorry for what I did, and say what it is you did. Number 3 is show that you understand why it was bad. Don't Again, it's all about taking that accountability, right? Taking responsibility directly for what happened. And I think this is a really key element because, I know in my experience, it's scary to name the thing because it feels like you're losing some semblance of power. And we have to realize that by being vulnerable, we're actually engaging in the most powerful behavior we can. By releasing this fear of control, this shame that really manifests in these moments, by just releasing it and allowing yourself to be soft and small, you know, those are times when we heal the most. Now, obviously, this all also comes with a lot of caveats. You know, there are people who you are not safe to be small around. There are people who you are not safe to be soft around. You know, I learned that firsthand, and that's okay. Um, these are moments of learning. You know, I talk often about, like, there's no right or wrong decision. There's simply the decision you made with the information you had at that time. And now that you have new information, you get the chance to make new choices going forward. So if you've learned in the past that you cannot be safe around this person, then, you know, maybe this advice isn't for you. And that's okay. That's no failing on anybody's part. It's just showing that you can't be connected to those people. Number 4 is only explain if you need to and don't make excuses. So when you're apologizing, when you're talking about what happened, it's not saying I did this because of, or you maybe do this, or, you know, this was going on in my life. It doesn't matter. Be direct, be clear, and own your part in things. Number 5, say why it won't happen again. And I would almost add in and demonstrate that it's not going to happen again. Explain what you've recognized in yourself that has led to this choice being made, and what you're doing about ensuring that doesn't happen again. Number 6 is offer to make up for it. Now, you are not entitled to forgiveness. You're not entitled to a continued connection, but make the offer to make up for the mistake if possible. And the 6.5, again, you're not entitled to, but is this idea of listen. So once you have done your apology, once you have explained you've explained why it's not going to happen again, give space to the other person to talk and allow them to express themselves, and don't try to push back. This is something that I learned, and this is, you know, the funny enough is I could very easily slip into an excuse of, you know, I dysregulate at the drop of a hat. My emotions, you know, a factor of BPD is I have very, very um big emotions. I don't have that kind of middle of the road, oh, this is a little uncomfortable. It either becomes my body's going to die or I'm in ecstasy. And that's just how my nervous system works. But that, again, that is no excuse. So if I'm going to offer space to listen to the other person, I need to make sure that I am able to regulate myself. And if I'm not able to do that, then I need to not offer that. And so the listen step, A, you're not entitled to, but B, you need to not offer it if you can't hold it. So you have to be really, really aware of yourself, aware of your triggers. Again, this is why these different concepts, I think, build upon each other. You know, this idea of know yourself, right? Do that shadow work, understand what your triggers are, understand what your issues are, take accountability within yourself for yourself, and build towards that apology, and recognize that if you can't hold it, don't offer to, because that is another factor of people pleasing, is over giving of yourself, draining yourself, and then blaming the other person for the choice that you made. And all of this falls under the umbrella of that third term I brought up, which is communication, right? Who are you communicating with? Why are you communicating with them? How are you communicating it with them? Why do you want to communicate with them? These are all really important factors that I think we go into autopilot regarding. And I think we could really stand with being a lot more mindful of what it is we are subconsciously trying to get out of these communications. Something I've been thinking about a lot over the years of doing this podcast is this idea of social media has forced us to be in connection to far too many people. And it has actually started to build this social shame to not be in connection with people from our past. This has never been the case. It used to always be, up until literally the 2000s. It used to be, you know, you went out of your house and you couldn't be reached, right? Because there were no cell phones. You made a plan, you went and did it, or you got stood up. And even longer before then, you know, before cell phone, before telephones, even, you know, before communication, you went about your life and you weren't in connection to everyone all the time. You had no idea what your ex from high school's second child was named. You had no idea what your old English teacher's daughter was doing at the dance recital. Like there was no reason to know these things, and social media has put this pressure on us to know everything about everyone all the time, and I think it's making us really, really sick because it's forcing us to perpetuate connections that are not good for us, and it's making us think that that is the healthy choice, to communicate with everyone about everything all the time, which, to be perfectly frank, is one of the needles I'm trying to thread regarding this podcast. Am I oversharing? Do strangers deserve to know the inner workings of my brain? Do they want to know? Is this me making a mistake? I don't know, right? I'm following an impulse and I'm seeing where it goes, but you know, it 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 all plays together into these concepts of what is healthy communication, what is over communication. And that roots itself in this concept of self knowledge, knowing who you are, doing the internal work, understanding where it is you are coming from, where it is you want to go, how you're going to go about doing that, and how you're going to say that to people. Again, I understand that the vast majority of social interaction is nonverbal. Words are limiting. All words in essence are lies because they are not the truth. When I say a chair, that word is not chair, right? It's not a chair. It's describing a concept. So words in a certain light are all lies. So they're clumsy and they're sloppy and they're imprecise. And at the same time too, the only way we're going to truly try to understand each other is through these words. I shouldn't say one of the only ways, at least one of the most direct ways. And that's something that I'm really valuing in the connections that I'm building in my life is direct communication. No implications, no room for ambiguity, just really truly owning what we want, saying it, asking for it, telling each other where we're going, why we're going there. And then, of course, leaving room to fuck that up because, as I said, life is messy. We fuck up all the time. We think we want this, we find out new information, and then suddenly things change. That happens. That's what life is. That's what being alive is. And that's okay. And so it's about understanding that you need room to make mistakes. That's what I'm always telling my students at work is that you have to allow yourself the risk of failing if you ever want to potentially succeed. Yet another paradox. You have to be able to fail if you want to succeed. And that's scary as fuck, which is the baseline of life. Life isn't fun. It can be at times, but that fun ends. Just like it can be really scary at times, and that fear ends. You just have to allow yourself the potential to have the outcome you don't want if you are actually going to achieve the outcome you do. I find journaling to be life changingly helpful in this regard. You get the idea of something you might want, you write it out, you redraft it, you rewrite it, bullet point it, you kind of play with the concepts, you ask yourself deeper questions, you ask, why did this point resonate with me? Why do I want that? You get deeper into it and you really explore yourself and you explore what your desires are, what your goals are, what your end goal is, and then you find ways to communicate that with the people who are safe to communicate with. People don't need to be safe. They don't need to maintain a connection with you. There's no imperative. There's no obligation, right? It's purely, do they want to do that? And recognizing that if somebody doesn't want to be in connection with you, that doesn't make you a bad person. That's no reflection of your quality as a human. That's a reflection of that person's desires, and they just don't want you around. And that's okay. If anything, that's their loss, right? So, yeah, those are the tentpole concepts I've been working with this month. And that is a very surface overview of some of the thoughts I've been having. I really feel like I could just talk endlessly about it, but I think I should probably button it here for the month and jump into some listener questions. If any of this really resonates with you and you want to explore it further, read Sorry, Sorry, Sorry. Google shadow work. I'll put some resources in the show notes about some of the material I've been working with. Better communication skills, these kinds of things. But I really think it is beneficial for everyone, not just somebody healing from trauma, just anybody who wants to show up a little clearer in the world. I think it really behooves us to explore this material and explore ourselves and see what else we can come up with to be more in connection with ourselves and then build stronger connections with the community around us. So let's put the pontificating away for the month, and now let's move to some listener questions. I got an absolute flood of questions over the last couple of days when I put out the call. As a reminder, if you ever have a question that you'd like answered on the show, email me, friendlesspod@gmail.com, or message me on TikTok or Instagram. I'm always collecting questions. I got so many questions this month that I don't think I'm going to be able to get to all of them. So I'm going to backlog those and try and figure out what to do with the extras, whether they go to next month, or I think I might actually make a couple of these questions into a bit of a longer form thing, because there was some really, really interesting questions about stuff about self-publishing and things like this that I think could merit a little bit of a longer exploration. So I'm going to backburner a couple things, but let's dive into the ones that we can't get to. So first question, are you going for the JTT hair? Because it is working. Yes, I am. Now, I realize on podcasting, podcasts aren't exactly a visual form, but if you follow me on TikTok or Instagram, you will see that I absolutely have been rocking the 90s Dreamboat hair. I think of it more as the Sean Hunter hair from Boy Meets World, but I will absolutely take JTT. Thank you. I appreciate it. I try. A little bit more in line with the subject matter of the month. Someone asks, do you have to forgive just because enough time has passed, or can you move past it and not go through the actual process of forgiveness? And this is such a great question that I ask myself endlessly about all kinds of people from my past. And where I have landed lately is this idea that forgiveness can't be performative. Forgiveness starts first and foremost within yourself. And I think that more often than not, at least in my experience, I think I've rushed to forgive others so that I can settle down these unresolved feelings within myself. But when I actually reflect on those moments, I still haven't forgiven myself, which is really the core of it. I talk often about self-love and unconditional self-love, right? And that comes with forgiveness. And I think that more often than not, forgiveness has to start with yourself. And whether or not you forgive someone else kind of doesn't matter, especially if you're not in connection with them. So I think this idea of like sort of performing forgiveness or giving forgiveness, I don't know how necessary it truly is. If someone's not in your life, then it sort of doesn't matter what they think of you. And in a lot of ways, it's probably healthier to just let them be wrong rather than to reconnect and try to explain. I think forgiveness really is more about reflecting on how you showed up, forgiving yourself for it, and learning from that. If you want to connect and if you want to apologize, that's something, but I don't think that you need to prompt forgiveness. And in a lot of ways, I think if somebody has hurt you and they're not reaching out to apologize, I think prompting an ask for forgiveness is, or even an offer of forgiveness is actually gonna more often than not backfire, because people are out here just living their lives, and more often than not they're not thinking about what happened with you. So I think reinstigating these things without first really considering them and sort of testing the waters and seeing where these people are, I think that that is a recipe for disaster to probably make things worse. Next question I've been pondering endlessly. What is a weird combo that you enjoy? And that's such a tough one for me, because it's like I go in a few different directions. I think about food. I'm a big fan of like sweet with bacon. I was gonna say salty, but realistically, it's just like I put like I've started putting bacon bits on my waffles in the morning, which has been a blast. The thing is, when I hear the word combo, I think about other directions. Like, I am a massive fan right now of getting as many different colors as I can in my outfits. And I was always told that there are, clashing colors and things like that. And I've kind of stopped giving a shit about that. So I think, comboing just random colors together has been a source of great joy for me recently. And those are just sort of like off the dome thoughts. I've been really trying to think of like what is a weird combo, and I sometimes have trouble discerning what I like but would be perceived as weird to people outside of my brain, right? And so it's like, I don't know, like come over and watch me and see what I do and see what weird connections I make and things I pair together and tell me, is that weird? Is that unusual? I don't fucking know. It just makes me happy, which is really my almost entire goal of my day lately is just like allow myself to feel joy as often as possible because I have tended towards denying myself that. Here's a good one. What accent do you think crows would have if their speech was translated to English? Recently, I put up a TikTok talking about how I desperately want to befriend the gang of crows, or is it the murder of crows that live across the alley from me? And crows, I find just so fascinating. I forget the exact precise fact of this, but I mean, I learned it years ago, and probably it's made up. But I remember hearing once that crows have different dialects and like different accents. So like a crow that grows up in Vancouver won't actually really be able to speak to a crow that like lives in Calgary or something like that because they have these different dialects and I guess you could call them accents. So in one direction, I think if crows were able to speak English, they would have all kinds of different accents. It would just sort of depend on where they grew up. I imagine they would have a speech impediment because of their beaks. But I think my preferred accents would be something like direct but still smooth and confident, something like a French accent or like a German accent, something that would be like very, very direct speaking, but still kind of romantic and like kind of swoop you off your feet a little bit. Right? Wait, that's a pigeon. I don't know. What does a crow do? I don't know. I don't even know. I just watch them. I don't listen to them. And the last question of the month is an important question, one that was asked by a dear, dear friend of mine. The question is bagels. That's it. Bagels. And I really think that this is a genuine exploration that deserves so much more time than I'm going to give it on this episode. I fucking love bagels. I don't eat enough of them. There is no truly good source of bagels near my place. There's Sully's on Main, but it's far. There's nothing in Marpole, and so I don't get nearly enough bagels in my weekly life as I would like. Um, and also, even the best bagels in Vancouver just don't hold a candle to the bagels out east. I'm also a bit of a picky bageler. I ate far too many everything bagels in university, and now just the thought of an everything bagel makes me slightly nauseous. I do still love urban garlic cream cheese though. Give me like a cheddar bagel. Ooh, just cheese. Just give me something. Just give me cheese. Oh, just give me cheese. But I will admit, bagels, just like ice cream, just like donuts, you don't need to be fancy. I don't need you to dress it up and toss 10 different ingredients in and call it some exotic name. I just want a plain old bagel with a little bit of salt, right? Just like ice cream. I'm like, just give me chocolate. I don't need all the explosion melange, right? It's already a treat. Ice cream is enough of a treat. I don't need it to be an adventure. But yeah, what a incredible question. Bagels. What do you think when I ask the question bagels? Let me know. Write to me. Friendthespot@gmail.com. Bagels. What do you think? Thank you all so much for your questions. As I said, all those other questions are noted. They are not being ignored. They are going to be answered in a future episode. I just have to figure out what I'm going to do with them. It might be an extra bonus question, a bonus episode. It might be just pushed to next month. We'll see. Lots of different factors at play there. But if you think of a question in the meantime and want it answered on a future episode, another reminder, email me, friendlesspod@gmail.com, or message me on TikTok or Instagram at friendlesspod. And I have nothing else to talk about this month, so you know what? Let's hit that wrap-up music. That's it for another month. Thank you all so much for listening. These Little Guy episodes are such a blast to record. I hope you enjoyed them. If you did, please be sure to leave a 5-star review anywhere you listened. It is so helpful to me, and it's completely free to you. Speaking of free, if you want more Friendless content, why not sign up for my weekly Substack? You're going to get a curated playlist for the month. You're going to get curated poems every week from the challenge I've set for myself to read a book of poetry every week this year. You are going to get 5 fun things to check out that I've enjoyed that week. Anything from movies to YouTube videos to articles to just all kinds of fun distractions that have brought me joy, and I'm trying to pass along to you. It is all completely free. There is going to be a subscription launching soon. It has been delayed, unfortunately, but I am aiming for a mid-June, early July. We're going to see about that, but it is going to be so much friggin' fun. There's going to be mini courses. There's going to be a private Discord. There's going to be live episodes. There's going to be so much more involved. I cannot wait to show you the plan. It's going to be an absolute blast. But all that, along with the next episode coming out next week, does not need to be worried about right now, because that is all then, and this is now. So for now, just try your best to live in the moment, enjoy yourself, enjoy your friends, and do your best to take some of that pressure off, because it is not worth it. Anyway, I love you. Fun and safety, sweeties.